everyone, and welcome to this deep dive into Scandinavian minimalist design. We've got a ton of great sources to go through today, so I'm really excited to get into it. Minimalism sounds simple at first glance, but I think we're going to find out it's way more complex than it seems.
Yeah, definitely. What I think is super interesting is that it's more than just like making your home look nice. It's like a whole philosophy of living that goes way back in Scandinavian history and culture.
Wow, that makes me even more curious. So let's get started with the basics. What exactly is Scandinavian minimalism? How would you define it?
Okay, so imagine the Nordic landscape, right?
Right.
It's kind of stark and rugged, but also amazingly beautiful. That's where Scandinavian minimalism gets its inspiration. It's about long winters when being practical and functional is super important.
So it's all about being practical and making things work well in tough conditions.
Exactly. And that's why you see so many natural materials in this style, like lots of light-colored woods, birch and pine especially. Think about all the forests in Scandinavia. They use what's around them.
Okay, I see the connection. It's about bringing nature indoors, in a way. I'm looking at one of the sources we have here, name of source. It talks about how Scandinavian design has always been connected to nature. But beyond using natural materials, how else does that connection show up in the designs?
It's all about simplicity and focusing on the most important things. Picture a room full of light with clean lines and no clutter. It's not about getting rid of everything comfortable, but more about making every single thing in the room have a purpose.
Okay, that makes sense. But wouldn't a room like that feel kind of empty, like too perfect and maybe not very homey?
Oh, that's a really good point. And it's a common criticism people have. One of the sources, it's called Name of Source, talks about this idea of hygge. They say that's the key to making it feel warm and inviting.
Hig. What's that all about?
Think of it like that feeling of being super cozy and content. It's about making a space feel welcoming, like a retreat from the world.
So it's more than just a style, it's a feeling you want to create, like being intentional about making it feel warm and welcoming.
Exactly. And that balance between minimal and cozy, that's where the real skill comes in. One source, Name of Source, even suggests things like adding textured blankets, sheepskin rugs, or candles to make it feel more intimate.
I can see how those things would make it feel warmer without messing up the simplicity of the design. But how do you make sure it feels like your personality is in the space and not just some generic showroom?
That's where you get to be creative. Earlier you said it could feel like a museum, which is a great comparison. But think of it this way. You're the curator of your own home, and you get to pick what goes in your museum.
Oh, I love that. So it's not about being afraid to add personal things, it's about choosing them carefully.
Yes, exactly. It's about displaying things that make you happy, that have special meaning, or that show off your unique tastes. Like maybe you have a collection of old books, or family photos on the wall, or even just one amazing piece of art. Those things add warmth and make it feel real.
This is when it gets really exciting. It's like you're taking these design rules and using them to make something totally unique. But what about keeping it timeless? I mean, wouldn't Scandinavian minimalism just look dated after a few years?
That's a smart question, and it's something a lot of people think about. One of your sources, Name of Source, talks about this directly. They say the secret is to invest in pieces that are timeless, like a classic outfit that never goes out of style.
Okay, that makes sense. So, what are some specific things that make a design timeless in Scandinavian minimalism?
Look for furniture with simple, clean lines and make sure it's well made. Natural materials like wood and leather will always look good, and fabrics with subtle colors too. Try to avoid things that are super flashy or trendy, and pick things that will last for a long time.
So, it's all about those basic elements that never go out of style. Okay, that makes me feel better. But what about color? Isn't Scandinavian minimalism all about white, gray, and beige? That seems kind of boring to me.
Ah, yes, the color question. It's true that they tend to use a lot of neutral colors. But there's this source, Name of Source, and it talks about how light itself is a key part of the design. It's like the neutral colors are just the background, not the whole picture.
Oh, interesting. How does light play into the color scheme, then?
Well, because they have those long winters in Scandinavia, they've become experts at making the most of natural light. Big windows, strategically placed mirrors, light walls. It all works together to make the space feel bigger and more open.
So they're using light to make the minimalist look even better. That's pretty clever.
Exactly. And then you can use color to add your own personal touches without going overboard.
Okay, give me some ideas. What colors would you suggest?
This is where your own style comes in. One of the sources, Name of Source, suggests looking to nature for inspiration, like blues and greens from the Scandinavian landscape. Soft, muted colors that bring the outdoors in, but don't feel too jarring.
So it's like using color as an accent, not the main focus?
Yes, a little bit of color at a throw pillow, a piece of art, or even one piece of furniture can make a big difference. And don't forget about plants. They add life and energy to any minimalist space.
Okay, I'm liking this. I'm starting to see how everything fits together. The nature, the practical design, and the personal touches. But there's this big question I keep thinking about.
I think I know where you're going with this. Is true minimalism really possible for most people?
You got it. We live in a world full of stuff. Is it even realistic to try to live so simply, especially with families, kids, pets, and all that?
That's something we'll definitely get into. But before we tackle that big question, let's talk about where this style works really well. Based on your sources, it seems like small spaces are a perfect example.
That makes sense. The clean lines and no clutter would definitely make a small apartment feel bigger. But wouldn't it also make it feel even smaller if you take away too much?
That's where the brilliance of Scandinavian minimalism comes in. One of the sources, name of source, explains how this style can actually make a small space seem bigger than it is.
Wow, really? How do they do that?
It's a bunch of things working together. Remember all those light-reflecting surfaces? White walls, light wood floors, shiny accents. They all bounce the light around so the room feels brighter and more spacious. And because they're minimalist about furniture, every piece is chosen carefully so there's no clutter and plenty of floor space.
So they're turning the small space into a design feature. That's cool. What about homes that don't have a lot of natural light? Wouldn't that be a problem for a style that's all about being bright and airy?
That's actually another strength of Scandinavian minimalism. It's almost like it was designed for dark spaces. Think about it. Light colors reflect more light, making the room feel brighter. And the clean lines and minimal furniture keep the space from feeling cramped or closed in.
So they took a problem and turned it into a solution. That's pretty clever.
Exactly. And it all goes back to those basic ideas we talked about, being functional and connected to nature.
Okay, so we've talked about small spaces and limited light. What are some other situations where this style would be perfect?
Well, anyone who wants to get rid of clutter would love Scandinavian minimalism. Your source, from name of source, says that clutter can actually stress you out and make you feel bad.
Really? Is there science behind that?
It seems so. Apparently, when you see a lot of clutter, it overloads your brain and makes it hard to focus and relax.
I had no idea. So it's not just about looks, it's actually good for your mental health.
Exactly. And Scandinavian minimalism, with its focus on simplicity, is all about creating that sense of calm. Think about how much clearer your mind feels when your space is tidy and everything has its place.
It's like your outer space reflects your inner peace. Less stuff, less stress.
Yeah, you got it. And this leads us to specific rooms in a home. Scandinavian minimalism can work anywhere, but it's especially good for bedrooms and bathrooms.
Because those are the rooms where we relax and unwind.
Exactly. Picture a peaceful bedroom with soft fabrics, sunlight streaming in, and only a few carefully chosen pieces of furniture. It's a total sanctuary.
I can totally see it. It sounds so relaxing. But I have to ask, how realistic is true minimalism? I mean, we live in a world that's always telling us to buy more things.
You're right, that's a big challenge. And we're going to dig into that next. But
Yeah.
before we talk about the challenge, I think it's important to really understand where this style shines.
Okay, you've got me hooked. Let's get into those challenges.
Okay.
After all, we're here for a deep dive.
All right, let's unpack those potential problems and see if Scandinavian minimalism can really work in the real world. All right, so let's tackle those challenges head on. One of the biggest things people say about Scandinavian minimalism is that it can feel kind of cold and impersonal, like a furniture store instead of a real home.
Yeah, I get that. We talked about Higge earlier and adding your own personal touches. But one of the sources, name of source, actually says that true Scandinavian minimalism should be a little bit austere. How do we make sense of that?
That's where things get interesting. It's not about following a bunch of rules, it's about understanding the main ideas and making them work for you.
So it's like finding a balance between that stark minimal look and making it feel cozy and lived in.
Exactly. And remember, minimalism isn't about not having anything. It's about being thoughtful about the things you do choose to have in your space.
I see what you mean. But one source, name a source, says that it's about more than just getting rid of stuff. It's about making your home feel connected to nature.
That's a really important part of it. And you see that connection in the materials they use, the way they bring in natural light, and even the shapes and textures they choose.
So it's not just about having LS stuff, it's about the kind of stuff you have, stuff that reminds you of nature.
Right. And that connection to nature is good for us. There's actually a lot of research that says being in nature can make you feel less stressed, happier, and even more creative.
Wow, I didn't know that. That makes me even more interested in this whole idea. But I gotta admit, I still worry about it looking too trendy. Like, will my home look outdated in a few years if I go all in on this style?
I hear you. One of the sources, name a source, actually gives some tips on how to avoid that. They say to focus on timeless pieces, just like you would with clothes that never go out of style.
So, like a capsule wardrobe, but for your home.
Exactly. It's about choosing quality over quantity and opting for pieces that will stand the test of time.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm seeing a pattern here. It seems like the key to good Scandinavian minimalism is being really thoughtful about your choices, like with the furniture you buy and the colors you use.
You got it. And that brings us to another potential problem, the limited color palette. A lot of people think Scandinavian minimalism is all about white, gray, and beige, which some people find kind of boring.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I like the idea of a calm space, but I don't want it to feel like a hospital room.
Don't worry, you don't have to give up color entirely. One source, name of source, says you can use those neutral colors as a base and then add pops of color with things like fabrics, artwork, and accessories.
Oh, that's a good idea. So it's like using color as an accent, not the main attraction.
Exactly. Think about using colors inspired by nature, like blues and greens from the Scandinavian landscape. Those colors can make the space feel more interesting without being too overwhelming.
So instead of being scared of color, it's about using it in a way that works with the minimalist look.
Exactly. And remember, it's your home, so you get to choose what makes you happy. If you love a bright color, go for it. The important thing is to be intentional and make sure the colors you choose look good together.
This is making me rethink my whole approach to color. I used to think more was always better, but now I'm seeing how nice it can be to have some restraint.
It's amazing how changing your perspective can change how you see things, right?
Mm.
And speaking of perspective, let's talk more about natural light. It's a big part of Scandinavian minimalism.
Yes, we touched on it earlier, but I'd love to hear more about how they actually use natural light in their designs.
Well, it starts with those big windows. They often don't have any curtains or just very light ones, so the sunlight can really pour in. And they're really good at placing mirrors strategically to reflect the light and make the space feel bigger. Of course, the light colors we talked about also help maximize the brightness.
So they're basically using light like it's a part of the design, not just something to see by.
Exactly. And it all ties back to their connection to nature. They've learned how to deal with those long, dark winters by making spaces that feel bright and open, even when it's gloomy outside.
That's so inspiring. It's like they turned a problem into a feature. But what about those of us who don't live in a place with lots of sunlight? Can this style still work in a darker home?
That's a great question, and it's something a lot of people wonder about. But don't worry, Scandinavian minimalism can still work its magic, even if you don't have a ton of natural light. One of your sources, name of source, suggests using different kinds of artificial light to make a warm and inviting atmosphere.
So it's not just about using one overhead light.
No. Think about adding table lamps, floor lamps, and even those cool hanging lights to make the space more interesting. And don't forget about candles. They add a touch of warmth and coziness, especially in the winter.
Okay, you're making me want to go out and buy some new lamps. But I gotta be honest, I'm still struggling with this idea of achieving true minimalism. It seems so hard when we're surrounded by messages telling us to buy more, more, more.
I know, it's a real challenge. And it's important to be realistic. Achieving a truly minimalist lifestyle takes effort, especially in our consumer-driven society.
So, where do we even begin? How do we change our thinking from wanting more to wanting less?
One of the sources, name a source, suggests starting small. Instead of trying to declutter your whole house at once, pick one area, like your closet or your kitchen counter, and focus on simplifying that. Once you've done that, you can move on to another area, and slowly but surely, you'll start to see a difference.
Okay, so breaking it down into smaller steps makes it feel less overwhelming.
Exactly. And as you go through the process, keep asking yourself these questions. Do I really need this? Does it make me happy? Does it have a purpose? If the answer is no, then it might be time to let it go.
I like that approach. It's not about getting rid of everything, it's about choosing the things you really want to keep. But what about when you have a family? Is it even possible to be minimalist when you have kids, pets, and all the stuff that comes with them?
Ah, the family factor. It's definitely a challenge, but It's not impossible.
Hmm.
One of your sources, Name of Source, talks about how important it is to talk to your family and compromise when it comes to minimalism.
So it's about finding a balance that works for everyone, not forcing everyone to live a certain way.
Exactly. It's about working together to create a space that feels calm and organized, even with all the craziness of family life. And remember, it's a journey, not a race. You don't have to be perfectly minimalist overnight.
That makes me feel so much better. It's not about reaching some impossible goal, it's about making small changes over time. But even with all these helpful tips, I can't help but wonder, is minimalism really just an individual thing? Or can it be something we do together as a community?
That's a really interesting question. And I think it gets to the core of what Scandinavian minimalism is all about. It's not just about having a beautiful and functional home, it's also about building a sense of community and connection.
I never thought about it that way. How does it actually work in real life?
Well, think about how Scandinavian homes are designed. They often have a big shared space, like living room or dining area, where people can come together and connect.
Hmm.
And the minimalist style, with its natural materials and clean surfaces, creates a peaceful atmosphere that's perfect for conversations and spending time together.
Oh, I see what you mean. So it's not just about the stuff, it's about how the space brings people together.
Exactly. And that brings us to another really cool aspect of Scandinavian minimalism, its connection to sustainability.
Tell me more about that. I know sustainability is important, but I haven't really connected it to minimalist design before.
Well, one of your sources, Name of Source, explains how the ideas behind Scandinavian minimalism actually fit really well with sustainable living.
Okay, I'm all ears. How so?
Think about it this way. When we buy less stuff, we're using fewer resources. When we invest in well-made things that last a long time, we're not contributing to the throwaway culture. And when we simplify our lives, we have more time and energy for things that really matter, like being in nature, connecting with people we love, and doing things we're passionate about.
Wow, that's a totally new way of looking at it. It's like Scandinavian minimalism gives us a model for living a life that's better for the planet and for ourselves.
Exactly. And that's what makes this design movement so powerful. It's not just about looks, it's about a way of life that has meaning.
This has been such an amazing conversation. I feel like I've learned so much about the power of simplicity, both in design and in life. But before we wrap things up, I'd love to get your final thoughts on this whole movement. What do you think is its most important legacy?
That's a great question. I think the most amazing thing about it is that it's timeless. Scandinavian minimalism is more than just a trend. It's a way of thinking that connects with our human desire for simplicity, beauty, and connection.
I love that. It's like it shows us a way to live a better life, one that's free from all the clutter and chaos of the modern world.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it continues to resonate with people everywhere. It gives us a vision of a life that's both stylish and sustainable, one that focuses on what truly matters.
This deep dive has been so insightful and inspiring. I feel like I have a whole new appreciation for the power of simplicity. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
I like that idea. Let's give them something to ponder.
We've talked about all the cool things about Scandinavian minimalist design, where it comes from, what makes it special, and even some of the challenges. But here's something to think about. In a world that's always telling us to buy more stuff, is minimalism really something you can achieve, or is it more like a journey?
That's a really thought-provoking question. I think it goes back to what we've been talking about this whole time. True minimalism, like the perfect version of it, might be something we can only dream of, especially these days. But the best part about this way of thinking is the process itself. It's about making choices every day about what you let into your life, your home, everything.
So it's not really about having a perfectly minimalist house, it's more about having a minimalist mindset.
That's it. It's about asking yourself, do I really need this thing? Does it make me happy? Does it have a real purpose in my life? If the answer is no, then maybe it's time to let it go.
And that goes for more than just stuff in our homes, right?
Right.
Like one of the sources, Name of Source, talked about something called digital minimalism too.
Oh, absolutely. We can apply these same ideas to our commitments, relationships, even our online lives. What can we cut back on? What can we simplify? What can we get rid of completely to make space for the things that truly matter? Maybe it's unsubscribing from emails you never read,
Yeah.
or spending less time on social media.
It's like taking that minimalist thinking and using it for everything in your life. That's pretty amazing.
It really is. And the great thing is, there's no one right way to do it. It's about finding what works best for you and what makes you feel happy and fulfilled.
This deep dive has been such an eye-opener. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how powerful simplicity can be.
It's been awesome exploring these ideas with you. Remember, the key is to figure out what works for you, what brings you joy, what gives you a sense of peace, and don't be afraid to let go of the things that don't.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us on this journey into Scandinavian minimalism. And to all our listeners, until next time, keep it simple, keep it intentional, and keep exploring.